right, my name is Matt, and this is Matt as well.
Hey, what's up?
All right, we are talking Outlast 2. You just played this. You are disturbed by this game.
In a word, I'm disturbed.
So let's set it up for people. The first Outlast was a brutal horror game going for a lot of shock value. It was all about running away and looking behind you as you did it. But you're saying that this one ups the ante.
Yeah, it ups the ante in a lot of ways. It's about twice to maybe three times the size of the first Outlast. The important thing is that Outlast 2 really doesn't have any connections to Outlast 1. Outlast 1 took place in an insane asylum, very claustrophobic. Outlast 2 takes place in the Arizona wilds. It actually has a lot of parallels you could draw to Resident Evil 7 in the way it tells its story, but it substitutes, a little desolate asylum for the huge expanse of the Arizona desert. So they've really flipped the script, and instead of it being about, well, they're still about claustrophobia, but it's really tightened down. What they did ante up was the amount of controversial content and the gore right off the rip. Before I say anything about this game, I just want to say this is not for everybody. And it's not like it ain't a Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 like this game contains violent content. Outlast 2 actually has a warning, and what it says Outlast 2 contains explicit scenes of violence, gore, nudity. Please enjoy. They have they have no qualms about really, I don't want to say glorifying, but really celebrating all the depravity in the world. And it definitely, I said it in my review, it toes the line of common decency. Nice, dude. Ghosts in the studio, ghosts in Outlast. Let's go.
So it's bringing out a lot of these really shocking elements, but you're saying that it really celebrates it. Does that mean that the tone of it is a bit kind of tongue-in-cheek in a way? Is it kind of like a Tarantino movie where it's super gory and super effed up, but it's a Tarantino movie, so it's kind of done with a bit of... No, there's no comedy to it. There's no lightness at all.
It's straight-faced. And this is something I was thinking about because Outlast 1, it was a very brief experience, maybe 6 to 7 hours, if you really had to go through it and got stuck. Outlast 2 is very long, and so a lot of it in the middle felt a little bit samey, and I was trying to find an identity. Outlast 2, kind of the way it turned out, kind of beckons an Outlast 3. So when you look at a game like Resident Evil, okay, green herbs, shooting was out. There's certain staples. In Outlast 2, they have the camera, but beyond the handheld camera aspect and the fact you can't hurt anything, which in Outlast 2 I think is a giant detriment, the enemy placement and all that stuff and having no weapons didn't really add to the tension. I'll get to that later. Okay. But beyond the handheld and the amount of just unabashedly gory and disgusting stuff, Outlast doesn't really have its own identity. The first one, your protagonist was very quiet, didn't really say anything. And two, this guy's a blabbermouth. Let me set the stage for you guys because I said Resident Evil 7 drew parallels. So Outlast 2 is the story about a man and wife. They're investigative journalists, and they hear about a impossible murder where a woman was strangled to death, but they think it was a suicide, like she strangled herself. So you're in a helicopter, you're going over the Arizona wilds, investigating this story when your helicopter goes down. Oh, there you go, helicopter down, and all of a sudden you find out that the surrounding area has a cult in it. Very elaborate cult. A lot of the backstory goes around and talks about this cult. It's very purposefully reminiscent of a like Roman Catholic Christian kind of subversive religion. And they say, your wife is harboring the Antichrist. We're stealing her away. And so now you must, as the husband, go and find your wife in the Arizona wilds. Meanwhile, you're having flashbacks to some mysterious backstory that happened when you were in a private Catholic school involving a little girl named Jessica. So it's very much cult, and there's so many images of religion. If I had $1 for every time I saw a crucifix, I could buy this game 14 times. Like, it is ridiculously in your face about religion, and that's why when you said, is it like Tarantino? Does it wink at you at all? No, in fact, a lot of the winks are just like, oh, you thought that's the worst it was gonna get?
Oh my God.
Not even close. And that's where I struggled with it. It's go ahead.
So it's a very serious amount of shock and gore, because I would assume from knowing you and talking to you for a month, I wouldn't think that you'd shy away from too much. You seem like a person that consumes a lot of media, and you can handle you got buttons on your toque. You could probably handle a lot of shock horror. So
Yeah.
this is right up there with like what Old Boy or even worse. This is like torture
Okay,
porn in
so
a way.
yeah, and it kind of harms me to say because Outlast 1 really, really did well by balancing both suspense and the shock.
Hmm.
Outlast 2 seems very much shock over suspense. There is a lot of really good elements, and this is the problem I have with Outlast 2 is that it's very inconsistent. Outlast 2 does a few things that are really smart by honing in on very specific phobias. So you have things like, oh, claustrophobia, you're going to get that in any horror game. But Outlast 2 makes a point of trying to put you in situations that will be very scary for a lot of people, like fear of the open water. They do that in great detail in a very specific segment. I don't
Right.
want to spoil a lot of things, but there is, 3 or 4 specific phobias I can pick out, and that's cool. The thing about the violence, the thing about the gore that I don't want to say disturbed me, but it was almost it towed the line and it was partially in bad taste at points. If you played the Outlast 1 DLC Whistleblower, that was sexually depraved in some very, very messed up ways, and it fit within the story. Outlast 2 kind of seems to base its story around the horror. So you have this cult, right? And it's led by a guy named Sullivan Noth. He's like he's the leader of the cult. He writes his own Bible passages that you find and stuff like that. And the whole entire idea of this cult seems to be to inbreed and then murder the children that come out of these incestuous relationships. I'm not kidding, guys. This stuff is heavy stuff. And it's not just that, but in these passages, they go into excruciatingly inappropriate detail about the lust of a child's slit throat and all these very, very just morbid things. And they even go as far as to show several toddlers' corpses and some of the late game stuff with the school and the Catholic school. It's predictable, but it's stuff that, like, I'm not saying I don't need to see this, but it didn't feel like there was a redeeming at no point was I like, there was one point where I was like, yeah, that guy got his. But really, Outlast 2 is just beyond the protagonist, a bunch of really shitty people doing a bunch of really depraved stuff, and nothing ever comes out of it. Like, at the end, it's just, yeah, it's the thing, but you never feel like this was told for a reason. It was just because somebody was sitting there and like, wouldn't it be messed up if we talked about crushing baby skulls? Let's make a whole section about it. And it's like, guys, I don't need that to get scared. The tense, and that was the main thing. The tense parts where it gets really quiet and the audio mixing is really well done and the art design looks great, because this game looks great. That was the stuff that pulled me in. The more psychological horrors based on specific phobias really pulled me in. And then when everything came up and it's like, look at this child murder, look at this gross depravity, this literal torture porn, it did nothing for me. In fact, it just felt like it weighed down the experience. Yeah, it's shock worthy, but it's not worth anything. So that was my main issue.
Yeah, when you look at a genre of those really grotesque horror movies where it's really about torture, usually the formula they use is that the main character is tortured and they just build on that suspense, and then in the end they break out and you kind of revel in them getting the revenge torture back.
Yeah.
But it only works if you like at least one of the characters, and if you really don't like the ones that are doing it to them. So it kind of sounds like there's not really much of a payoff here. I know you were talking to me earlier and you said the story's messed up, but you were waiting to see if it brings it around. Is it just that your main character is not likable at all?
So let me give it to you guys with no spoilers real quick. The problem is it doesn't have an identity. The first 4 hours of the game is very much about the outdoors. It's much about this cult. It's about trying to find your wife. There's even another, not warring cult, but another cult that says, oh, you should let her have the baby. And then this other cult that's like, no, kill the baby. It's the Antichrist. So there's like some stuff with that. And that's like the first 4 hours. And then it breaks and you kind of do your own thing where it goes like some of those specific phobia segments I talked about. And then it's almost like they completely lose the original storyline and they really start to bask in the protagonist himself. And what is his motivation for going and trying to find this woman or his wife? Because beyond marital loyalty, I mean, this there in Outlast 1, at least you could be like, all right, you can't get out of the asylum. You're locked in. At any point, this guy could just run. So they had to establish some sort of motivation for him to run around and be tortured and brutally maimed for 12 hours and still go and find this woman he cares about. Right. So they made this tortured past. And it's something I talked about with, like, you have these flashbacks where he goes to his Catholic school and there are these weird kind of visions and they slowly start to make sense narratively. And they really, really bank on that for like the second act and then leading into the third act. And then once you get to the third act, it's almost like you just run through it. It's kind of by the numbers. You have your ending. The cults, they're kind of forgotten about beyond the main villain who doesn't get a lot of screen time. The Sullivan character, the Sullivan Noth character I talk about, the leader of the cult, he appears in maybe 3 or 4 scenes. He's not very ever present. He's present in the lore, but you don't ever get to see him. Like the first real good look you get at him is when you finally see him in the end. So it builds up to a lot of things, forgets them, and then when it finally resolves them, it's very, very quick. And like you said, it needs to have a payoff. The actor doing the main protagonist wasn't the greatest, to be honest. Whoever did the wife and a lot of the other voices, they were fine, but I didn't like the male protagonist. And then when they flip flop on the story, I'm not sure who to care about, who not to care about. And Outlast is a game that's all about deep backstory, and the forefront story is kind of just by the numbers and very quick. It felt like it lacked focus, and I didn't know what I should care about, what I shouldn't care about. And in the end, yeah, you get a cool kind of twist. You get a cool kind of ending. But if the game focused on the main story and didn't drop off halfway through to tell you this, albeit kind of interesting backstory, it would be much more enjoyable. It's like the game was 2 games, and it decided to put them together, or they were like, we're going to do this DLC, but let's just pop it in as flashbacks. I mean, it's all pretty decent horror,
right?
But as a story, it's like someone just coming in every 20 minutes and throwing a flashback at you, and then eventually the flashback becomes the main story.
Okay, so the story is not strong. The acting of the main character is not strong.
Well, it's hard to say because the story is strong in pieces. There's very, very, very great points, and that's why I can't be like, this game is garbage, this game is trash, because I love the first one. And at points, and like you said, I'm a guy who plays lots of horror games. Resident Evil scared me once, and it was because my friend screamed behind me.
Right.
I turned off Outlast at a certain point. I mean, yeah, it was 5 a.m, all the lights were off, the sound was blaring, but I was like, okay, I can't really do this right now. I'm too nervous, I'm too whatever. So the fact that it was able to do that, and it was able to create the atmosphere, yeah, the lore around the story really is good, but the actual moment to moment, here's your rising action, here's your climax, here's your falling action, it's all over the place. So they created a really good world, but a lot of Outlast, like you said in the very beginning, is run, hide. You don't get a lot of time to bask in it. You don't get a lot of time to enjoy the environment. You don't get a lot of time to enjoy the story, and before you know it, it's over and you didn't feel like you really accomplished much. But along the way, there was some really, really, really great moments. So I feel like Outlast 2 would have been better instead of a 10-hour game or an 8-hour game if it was just a 5-hour game like the original. That's pretty much the bottom line on that.
Okay, well, let's circle back to how it all comes together. Getting away from sort of the intangibles and the atmosphere and the story and the narrative, how about the controls? Does it feel good to play? Is there, is it tight? Is all that together? Are the nuts and bolts there?
Thank you for reeling me back in, because I just finished this, so I have a lot of ideas floating. But as far as controls, as far as technical performance, Outlast 2 is really, really, really damn good. I mean, this is not a $60 title. I believe this is a $30 or $40 title. Texture-wise, it's pretty damn good. But lighting is fantastic. The game runs without hiccup. There was maybe once or twice where it stuttered for a bit because I was, clicking on a load menu or something like that. But technically speaking, the game runs perfect. It looks beautiful. A lot of the game is visually dark. That's something Outlast does, so there's that. But as far as controls, as far as really feeling like you're in the character and the immersion, it does it wonderfully. So if you played Outlast 1 and you liked how that controlled, you like how it played, Outlast 2 is more of the same, right, except they just up the ante. So as far as controls, as far as all that stuff, technical performance, it's perfect. I mean, I really have no complaints whatsoever. The main issue lies within the gameplay. Outlast 1, your enemies were more encounters. I can name the enemies in Outlast 1 because they felt significant. Outlast 2's enemies are plentiful, and since you have open space, you don't really have to hide from them. They're more like roadblocks and stuff like that. So controlling everything feels fine, but when you're just like, oh, here's an enemy, go around him, it loses a lot of the tensity that the first one had. But if you like how the first one played, yeah, it's more of the same, and it plays well too.
But it's a lot more open than the first, whereas the first was funneling you towards designed encounters. This is more like an open stealth game where you're spending most of your time avoiding in a large area.
Well, and that's the thing too, is because like the first one was very much stealth because it was in corridors and hallways. You can't really do anything or go anywhere. You can't jump out a window. I mean, you could, but two, it's open. Yeah, they still kind of corridorize it. That's not a word, but they try to make it cramped within the space. But I feel like there was about 8 times as many places that I could hide versus how many times I actually had to hide. I'd say in my entire 8 or 9 hour experience, I maybe forced myself to hide in a locker, true Outlast style,
Right.
4 times.
So
Beyond that, it was just like run away. That's all.
so the enemies became more of just an annoyance and a nuisance because it was so easy to avoid them?
Yeah, they didn't seem. There's a few characters that are scary. But most of them are just they're not big hulking monsters. They're just crazy people. And when you can just outrun them and just kind of scrape by them, yeah, there's certain enemies that they'll one hit kill
Outlast them.
you. Out in first them. There's a couple enemies that like they one hit kill you and they're really grotesque and scary. But for the most part, a lot of the enemies are just like Resident Evil mutant looking and then you just kind of skirt by them and the encounters don't feel big. They just kind of feel like, oh, you've been walking for a while, it's getting tense. Here's a guy to hop out at you and you're
Right.
scared. And yeah, sure, it'll work, but as a whole, I feel like the game would have done better with either no enemies, way less enemies, or just give me a gun at some point. I feel like in the way that Outlast tried to expand, it was to its detriment in some points, and also to its strengths, but mainly to its detriment, which is unfortunate.
Wow. So it really comes down, it looks like most of the crux of the game is on this story and the sort of the narrative experience of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's predictable.
you said you're floating pretty heavily between two review scores.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to give one now if you still don't have it, but who would you recommend this to?
I
Could you
don't.
even recommend could you recommend this to 100% of the people that liked Outlast 1, or would you still say even if you liked Outlast 1, only if you are willing to immerse yourself in this kind of shock? Is there another question I'll throw you? Is there any
Go.
sort of redemption in it? Is it just all negative all the time?
Yeah, no, that's the thing, and that's the thing. I mean, there is. It's hard to talk ending without spoiling, and I don't want to spoil it, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just like 7 hours of just this main character just running through, and it's like, wow, that person's messed up. Wow, that's a really fucked up thing you're doing. Wow, that's disgusting. Ew. And like every now and again, you get the hint of like maybe this guy has a good backstory. Maybe he's gonna be a redeemable character. Maybe, and then it just no. Like yeah, in the end, it kind of has your typical horror ending. You know, like you come out and it's bright. Okay, nice. I'm not going to spoil any of the ending for you, but there's as a character piece, no one has redemption. No one. There's like one character that kind of rights a wrong, but not really. It's really just like look at all this messed up stuff. The end. And to that point, Outlast One. I loved Outlast 1. I've played it several times. I even speed ran it or tried to learn the speedrunning techniques, which, if you know anything about speedrunning, you have to like a game quite a bit to do that. It's hard to suggest this universally to all Outlast fans because Outlast 1 was a psychological horror mixed with some violent content. Outlast 2 is a huge, huge push on religion. That's something like religion doesn't scare me inherently. I'm not a faithful person, so I don't really draw like an inherent fear from religion. But I know some people are super freaked out by it. So it doesn't have the psychological horror that Outlast 1 did. So it's hard to recommend for those psychological horror fans. But if you like the hide and seek kind of gameplay of Amnesia, if you liked that sort of play, Outlast is still the best in the game. I guess you say like they're the only ones who are really doing that the best right now.
Yeah.
But to that point, I can't universally say it's good because it is so different in both tone and both story from the original. I would say anybody who thinks the people who go online and look up top 10 most grotesque movie deaths, or people who like rewatching all the deaths in Until Dawn, like if you're looking for grossness, depravity, and shock, and that's something that you find entertaining, which of course, sure, we're all morbid. If you find that entertaining, yeah, go for it. Outlast 2 will definitely serve you a buffet of blood. But if you're looking for a deep kind of, intelligent, and I don't want to say it's non-intelligent, but something that will really make you think, something that'll really make you question or really get deep-seated fear, it's not going to go beyond that. It's an enjoyable time. I will say it's a fun run, but it doesn't have a lot of replayability to it beyond collectibles. And the story there, the backstory that you might want to explore, to me felt a little hollow. And I at a certain point I was like, I don't feel like reading 40 documents to get the backstory that I don't really care about that much. So true horror fans, true horror fans who really must play it all, yeah. Or fans of the original, yeah, but with the condition that it's really, really messed up and goes to some messed up places and it's all about religion, then I can recommend it if you're okay with that. But for your common horror gamer, I would say it's probably a bit too depraved. If you're squeamish at all, don't even think about it. Like if you're the person who closes your eyes or peeks through in PG-13 horror movies, like don't even look at the box.
Right.
It's truly the grittiest, most messed up horror game I've played in a long time, and it's hard to judge it just like it's hard to judge some of these really, really, really messed up horror films. There's fans of them, there's an audience for it, and at some points, yeah, it's pretty damn brilliant, but it all comes at the cost of like really what am I getting out of this? Like, why am I enjoying this?
So horrible, disgusting depravity. So if you're into commenting on videos on YouTube, this might be for you.
Exactly. Yeah. If that's what you love, if that's what you care about in your day, go for it.
And you played this on Xbox?
Yes, I played it on Xbox One. It looks fantastic on Xbox One. So if it looks, I'm assuming PC will look even better. I feel like I've been talking crap about this game the entire time. So, I mean, yeah, graphically, it's amazing. It's got some really, 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 really unique, really smart, even borderline brilliant horror sections, things that highlight horror or phobias that I never see in games. Like that, the fact that they really, really tried to be like, look at this giant open lake. You really are afraid of what's under there, right? Ooh, let's put you out on a raft. Like, ooh, there's something floating under there. That is cool. That's cool. You don't see those kind of moments in horror games much anymore. But the minutia, the minute to minute, sometimes it's repetitive. The environments look samey. That's something I want to bring up. Compared to Resident Evil 7, it's easy because you have all these different areas that look varied. Outlast 2 is essentially a bunch of the desert and then Catholic high school intermittent and then a mine at the end. That's it. There's really no varied environments. Everything else is just like, look at these rocks in this shrubbery. There's nothing that's really identifying. So as a suspenseful, like, oh, I'm going to play this for 25 minutes and be scared, yeah, it succeeds. But as a overall package and a story that's really trying to tell you something, it doesn't seem to tell me anything. It's just like, yeah, gross, ew, ah.
All right, so very literal buyer beware.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, let's talk about something a little sunnier.
Yeah, what have you been playing, my friend?
Well, I played a couple games lately. I played one called Brawlout.
Ooh,
Brawlout. So this is if you like Super Smash Brothers, this is a Super Smash Brothers clone.
Nice.
It is it's very, very polished. There's a lot of options in there that feel like they were put there by gamers. Nice. Just like when you're seeking a match, you can still dick around in the options menu. You can lock the frame rate in the options. Cool. There's just a lot of little touches there that feel like they are meant for PC. You can have the frame rate display, just little kind of technical aspects like that. I mean, the biggest hurdle when you're competing against Smash is you're competing against a franchise that's been around for so long that it's worked out the perfect balance. It has a gigantic roster and it has incredibly recognizable characters. I mean, who doesn't love Marth?
Dude, Marth's the best.
Yeah. Martha's always that one, and the North American people are like, what the hell's Fire Emblem?
What is this game? Oh, it's a strategy? Bleh. What's the roster like? Because yeah, Mario, Luigi, Donkey Kong, that's the reason people play Smash Brothers. Is it just like guy 1, guy 2? Like,
well, they're all animals.
Oh,
they're all animal people. So you've got a 4-armed toad.
Nice.
So 6 limbs. You got an ape. You got a big sort of gorilla. You got a bird creature that has, because like Smash, it has a double jump, but the bird one has, I think, 6 jumps. There's a cat. There's some sort of spiky thing, maybe a hedgehog. He plays a lot like Blanca. Okay. There are a lot of it is exactly Smash in terms of like how many jumps you can do. It uses a dodge for a block, which I think is like in Smash, and you have an attack and you have a special. You can press up, you can press back then forward. The attacks are all fairly intuitive in terms of where you're pointing, what you're going to get out of the attack. I cycled through most of the characters and felt like they all had their own strengths with it. Played online a few times. It was very, very laggy. unfortunately, when I was playing online. I think it uses a peer-to-peer connection, and um, all three of the matches I got into were all pretty slow and choppy. And I have a pretty good connection here, and
That's disappointing.
yeah, and I was hooked up with LAN. So maybe everybody I played was hooked up to wireless, but I imagine most people that are playing on a PC are hooked up to their modem.
Yeah. It's probably not you guys. A lot of fighting games when they come out, especially indie fighters or smaller fighters, they struggle with their net code. So that's disappointing
Yeah.
to see. That's disappointing to see. The best part about fighter games is fighting with people that you want to beat and being competitive. And if it's like
Yeah.
40 frames per second, or not 40 frames per second, but if it's lagging all over the place,
Yeah,
who's your favorite? Who's your favorite guy? Who's your favorite guy?
there was a I liked he was a monkey that had a grappling hook, so he could shoot it out like Roadhog and bring him in.
Grappling hook monkey.
Yeah.
This game's great.
And then he also had sort of a Dulcim double fist punch.
Nice.
And he seemed to be able to play kind of like a zone game, so he could keep people far away, but he was okay up close. They did a pretty good job in terms of balancing it out. I'm not the biggest Smash fan in the world. I played a ton of hours of GameCube Smash because I worked
Hell yeah.
at a kids facility where that's what we did every day, with all the adult staff and then all the kids,
Best
of
work.
course. When I was playing online, I could only do a one-on-one match. I don't know if I missed an option or whether that's going to come in later. But then I played as a bunch of versus the PC, just running it basically as a practice. And the AI wasn't great, but it was a good way to get to know your character before you can play online. They have a casual, they have a ranked, they have weekly tournaments that's going to be rolled out. This is an early access. They don't have that. And they're also going to have a little TV section where you can spectate others. So they're taking the competitive side of it very, very seriously.
But Matt, where's the story mode?
That is coming later on during the full
Okay.
release. They are going to have a single player mode. I mean anything like that is going to be gravy. I think on top of a Smash system. It just has to be good for multiplayer. That's kind of why I've bought a Wii U twice. Both times it came with Smash, and both times I either traded or sold it because I like single player games, or Mario Kart or Splatoon if I'm going to be playing multiplayer. So this is it's not going to have the polish of Nintendo, but I was pretty impressed with the visual look of it, the UI, the menus. It feels very tight. The budget didn't show in a lot of places. I thought it felt pretty.
Does it have enough complexity and depth? Do you think it'll continue on for quite some time?
Yeah, I think
fighters, they're either hit or miss. They either stay or they go.
Well, it's taken the Smash formula beat for beat. So
Nice.
The Smash formula has lasted because not only does it have a gigantic roster of recognizable and fun characters, the actual rock, paper, scissors of it is quite fun. This
Good
feels
game.
almost a little bit faster, a little more frenetic, whereas Smash I felt was a bit more zoomed out and you had a bit more room, and you could zone people a little better. You were a little more together on most of the maps, and it was a bit more frantic, and that was just with 4. Where it was
That's what I like. I like when Smash matches get like everyone's just doing everything. There's crap flying everywhere, giant Smash attacks. I like that. So if it's faster, that's better in my opinion.
I mean, I'm not a huge Smash whore, as they would
Hey
say.
man, you do what you got to do. You play what you got to play.
Yeah, but as far as I can remember, it feels a little bit faster, and it was genuinely pretty fun. I was going to hop in and just get a sense of it, but I played a lot longer than I originally intended to, even just playing the CPU and then hopping online and winning some and losing some. So if you're into Smash at all, and for some reason you want another cast of characters, it's a smaller cast, I think. Right off the bat, it comes with about 5 or 6, and then there were some other ones that were going to be unlocked later on. So that's going to be a bit of an uphill battle as they're starting off with a pretty small cast.
Is it PC, PS4, Xbox? It's just on PC and PS4 right now, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think because it's weird that I saw Q3 for Xbox One, I believe.
Okay.
Which is weird because PS4 is pretty light on early access stuff, whereas Xbox is pretty heavy on it. So you'd think they'd go Xbox, but
Yeah, it seems like it kind of seems whether Sony or Microsoft comes up on the radar, and then they go out and get it. So
heck yeah.
I guess Sony is willing to cannibalize their precious PlayStation All-Stars.
PlayStation All Stars.
Yeah, Battle Royale.
I liked it, dude. I thought that was a good game. I thought it was fun.
I've never played it.
It's fun because it's like Smash. I mean, but it doesn't have the complexity to continue on and be as, deep as Smash was. So that's where it fell off. But I still like it. What have you play anything else, or has it just been Brawlout on
There
Brawlout?
was Brawlout, and then there's another one. It's a throwback to 1996 Quake style
Oh,
arena shooters called Strafe.
nice,
This is
dude. Quake style.
like very. I mean, if people were getting sick of the 16-bit pixel art graphics, get ready for the next wave of 32-bit retro.
Oh no.
This is a lot of sharp polygons, and it's very proud of that. The marketing for it is pretty well done and pretty over the top. The opening menu is I mean, there's a little digitized computer, and then there's an old manual, and
Oh, that's cool.
it really loves the idea of 96. So with this game, it's procedurally generated. You are facing most of the time huge hordes of easy to kill enemies that don't move particularly fast. Think kind of like Call of Duty Zombies, but a bit slower.
Serious Sam, kind of maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
But the enemies are a little bit slower than say like a zombie would be in Call of Duty, where you don't really have time to sit around. The maps, for being procedurally generated, they're set up pretty nicely in a way that they always allow for a lap to be completed around. So the game really encourages circle strafing, obviously. I felt like the enemies were a bit samey after a while. I got lost in a few rooms. There's a map you can look at, but it's really not that helpful at all. The music starts off great, but it's very repetitive, and it gets pretty irritating after a while. And it's not very dynamic. It's quiet until you take your first shot, and then the music kicks in, and then that music will stay going until you've cleared the room. And
That's
when
just
you're
kind of it.
and when you've killed 99% of the enemies and you're frustrated looking for a door, and you just have this like do, you're like, shut up! I just want to find the stupid door.
I had that in Outlast 2 as well. Outlast had some points where it was the where do I go? What do I do? And they have, combat music, so you're just standing there, it's like dun 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 dun, and you're like, where the hell's this damn door?
Yeah.
That's the one thing I don't like. And I think a lot of old school games, I mean, it wasn't their fault, but the lack of clarity of where you're supposed to go is often a big issue. And it was kind of stupid to see that in 2017 with Outlast. But
Yeah.
do you think it was intentional for Strafe? Is it labyrinthian at all in its design? Or
No. It's just that the rooms look the same because they're
Okay.
procedurally generated. And I mean, I know that they probably think they can get more life out of it because the goal probably is to have people run these rooms over and over again, and it tells you your score and your stats and all that. But I think I would have got personally more mileage if they were more crafted. I would have appreciated it to be linear, designed in a way that makes the experience a little more meaningful, where this was more like just horde mode after horde mode in these giant rooms that, yeah, they're different because they're being generated, but they felt pretty similar. And there were a couple, those platforms, I don't know if you've ever played Doom, the ones that move up and down. There were a couple times where that ended up being how I got stuck, because I'm just looking around, and it's one thing if 90% of the room is, say, gray, and then you have a black grate, and you go, that's obviously something I stand on and press a button.
Yeah.
But I've been in a couple rooms where it generated so that the entire floor was this color, so I didn't really have any kind of visual language to say, right, you're supposed to press down. So it kind of, you have to use that old Doom strategy where you're looking for a secret, where you're just kind of hammering the action button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like that old Duke Nukem 3D, dude.
Oh yeah. It's an early access game, so there were a few problems. I like to play inverted, and it anytime I go to the options menu, it usually turns that off. It's not that big of a deal. The map is
Real men play inverted.
anyone who thinks inverted is wrong, just hop on a plane and you tell the pilot.
Do you ever play GoldenEye on N64, nerds? That's where real men learn to play. That's why everyone's always like, why do you play inverted? I'm like, because I played video games like a grown man when I was 11.
Because of Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yeah, oh, okay. Well, I mean, yeah, if you played Flight Sims, but inverted is the way to go. Sorry I interrupted you, Matt, but I needed to make that stance very, very apparent.
No problem at all.
So is it just like a bunch of levels, never-ending levels? Because you and I are the same. We like tailored stories. There isn't really. It's just more like points, and yeah, you did it.
I played the game for about like 4 hours in, or maybe a little bit longer. And I think I got to level 2, like over and over again. It can be very difficult. Here's the big problem, is that I believe I'm picking up health because I'm getting this universal symbol, the cross, right?
Yeah.
But no matter what I do, whether I'm using the controller or the keyboard, the inventory button and the item button doesn't appear to be working in this early access. So
Whoops.
so I guess I'm not good enough to get through it without getting any health. But I'm getting so many health packs, so I'm imagining that the point of the game is that you should be, using some health as you go along. It doesn't have
Yeah.
regenerative health because this is based on 1996 play, which I'm fine with. Completely fine. It does add a lot of tension when you can't just hide all the time. Like,
Yeah.
I think a big problem with the game Call of Duty Infinite Warfare was that it's so punishing and it so relies on regenerative health that you spend most of your time just hiding, popping out, shooting, hiding, and
It's like a duck hunt kind of thing. You're just like boink, pew
yeah.
pew,
Well, and
regenerate.
I find it takes the tension out because you know that is the most efficient way to play it is just to keep hiding. But in this game, it's all about grabbing the health as you go. But I couldn't figure out how to make that work. It's an early access, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They're going to bring that in. There were some moments too, especially sometimes when you're leaving levels, and then I had it a couple other times in the middle where the frame rate would go to about one frame a second,
Nice.
and you could still control with the left joystick, but I couldn't move the aimer. And it's early access, so they're probably gonna work that out. It was supposed to be out by now, actually, and they delayed it for I think till May.
Womp womp.
So that's probably why, because that's a pretty serious performance bug. I think if you're into these games, if you like Call of Duty Zombies, if you like those games of old, and you're looking for something very fast and explosive, you could find a lot to like here. This was. I would love to try it again when I had the health, because then I could maybe get a little bit further on and see what it's like.
When you can play the game.
Yeah, and I'd like to. Hopefully, there's a bit more variety in the enemies, because I ran into a couple. There's the big hordes. They look like goofy goblins, and then you have some larger guys, and then you have these little robots and some things on the wall. But it was a bit samey. Like, admittedly, though, I'd only played about 2, maybe 3 levels of it. So
You played for 4 hours though. That's quite a bit of time.
Yeah, but it's to be fair, I wasn't able to get that far. I'd say if you're looking for, whatever the price is on this, I think if it's $20 or less, and you really want that fast paced, it is extremely fast.
You don't get that much anymore unless you're playing like Quake Online.
Yeah,
Arena.
And the controls were very tight, very fluid. It worked pretty well on a joystick. The thing with the joystick is, well, like on an Xbox controller, is that if you bring the sensitivity down enough so that you can aim properly, or at least for me, you can't turn very fast, which can be a bit of a problem. But I think if you're more of a mouse and keyboard person, you're probably. I was messing around with that. The aiming was good with the mouse. I'm not so good with my left hand on a keyboard. I use my right hand most of the time, if you know what I mean.
This guy.
But if you're looking for another really punishing, fast-paced arena-style game, there's another one called Desync, which goes for more of like an 80s Tron neon style, and it's very, very punishing. But
I like that.
Whereas Strafe is all about hordes of easy to kill enemies that you can easily outrun, so kind of loses a bit of the tension. Desync is about putting you in an arena that's very small, where it's one hit kill, and even just 2 large enemies that are able to jump at you are a huge problem. It can get a bit cheap, Desync, because sometimes they spawn on top of you and you're not able to see them. But people that want a really hardcore experience, I'd recommend them check that one out as well. It feels a little bit more polished than this. However, this is in early access. So
for people who maybe wanted something a little spooky but don't want religious allegories, Microsoft, in a crazy turn of events, released the 2003 Voodoo Vince remastered on Xbox for $15.
Right.
I am also playing that, and there will be a review on 90skid.com soon. But yeah, it's Voodoo Vince. It's a game where it's the simplest thing, guys. There's a mystic named Madame Charmaine, and then the evil guy comes in and steals her zombie dust and kidnaps her. So she transfers her consciousness to her voodoo doll, and then you just gotta go save her. And it's 2003, early 2000s platforming, guys. It's about as simple as you're gonna get. But yeah, that game is fun. Me and you are very much alike. We like tailored experience. We like short games. And oh boy, was it refreshing to finish a level. It was
Yeah.
like, I'm on level 8. What? I'm not in an open world or on mission 6B. Like, oh, it
Right.
felt great.
Mission
So if you're looking for
32 of 96.
right, I'm like, I'm over this crap. But yeah, it's linear. It's just you do the thing, you jump around, you beat up the guys, you use super moves. It's a real good time, and it's only $15. So if you're
And it
looking for
holds up
like,
pretty well.
oh yeah, no, it's. I mean, it doesn't have any of the modern flair. But if you're just looking to jump on some platforms, beat up some guys, and be silly, and it's kind of like cocky and silly and cheeky,
Right.
and it's humor. It's well worth $15. So
It
just
felt
go.
that one felt like Microsoft was really looking for a Crash Bandicoot style game.
Yeah,
They wanted that goofy, zany comedy, and then the character looks like one of the Oogada Boogada guys from Crash Bandicoot.
it's like a mix of Crash running and then like Jack and Daxter kind of fighting. Like even when you do the double jump and then you use your spin move, it's like the same exact animation from Jack and Daxter. So if you played any
Crash.
like or yeah, Crash exactly. Yeah, if you've played any of those PS1, not like Ratchet and Clank, because it's very very melee heavy. But if you played any of those and you missed Voodoo Vince for any reason, like it's pretty fun time. And $15, you can't beat it. It's good. It's good. Buy it if you like Voodoo.
Well, there you go. The review for Outlast 2, if you'd like to read more, will be up on our 90skid.com. You can find news, reviews, a whole bunch of crap up there, and lots of videos on our site. I have been Matt Falva and will continue to be. You can find me on Twitter at GameThinkTalk. And this guy.
I'm Matt Owen, and I will also continue to be till the end of my days. And you can find me on Twitter at SuperGamecast64 and also on a90skid.com, as always.
Thanks. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with somebody. It helps.
Please.
And but we don't want to sound too desperate or anything. So,
No.
don't do it. Do your own thing. Do whatever you want.
Do what you want. I'm not your dad. All right?
Reverse psychology. All right, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.